The Galactic Academy's sprawling, glittering campus was a sight to behold, with towering structures that seemed to defy the laws of physics and gravity, illuminated pathways that changed colors as students walked by, and vibrant alien flora blooming in the gardens. It was a place unlike anything Megan had seen on Earth. She often marveled at the Academy's beauty, at the many species walking around in perfect harmony, and at the advanced technology that seemed woven into every corner of life here. But for Megan, as the only human currently attending the Academy, things were far from easy. Despite her attempts to blend in, her classmates and peers couldn't help but find her earthly habits amusing. The Academy was home to some of the most advanced beings in the galaxy, and students came from various planets with different backgrounds, biology, and customs. Yet, one thing they all seemed to have in common was the shared amusement they found in Megan's strange behaviors and practices. For most of the aliens, Earth was a backwater planet, underdeveloped and uncivilized compared to their own worlds. Humans were often viewed as simple, less evolved beings. They were curious about her, to be sure, but most of them were also baffled by her customs, often ridiculing them openly. It was one of those mornings when Megan arrived at the Academy's grand hall for her classes. The hall was enormous, with ceilings so high they seemed to disappear into the clouds. Soft lights floated in midair, illuminating the space with a gentle glow. Megan's classmates from various species were scattered around, reviewing notes or chatting before class began. She walked in, greeted a few familiar faces, and made her way to a seat at the back of the hall. She preferred this spot. It allowed her to observe without drawing too much attention to herself. But this morning, someone was already waiting to single her out. "Look who it is." A voice chimed from across the room. Megan turned to see Zara, a tall, slender alien with a shimmering, translucent skin that reflected the colors of her surroundings. Zara was known for her beauty and sharp tongue, and Megan knew better than to hope for a friendly chat. Zara's lips twisted into a smirk as she approached Megan. "I've always wondered," Zara began, her voice dripping with mock curiosity, "why you humans have such peculiar habits." She gestured to the small pack Megan always carried with her, containing her water bottle, a few snacks, a first aid kit, and other just-in-case items. Megan's mother had always told her, it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. This had become a part of her daily life, and even though she was now light years from Earth, she still carried this piece of advice with her. "What do you mean?" Megan replied, trying to keep her voice steady, though she felt a familiar knot of tension tightening in her stomach. She'd been through these types of conversations before, and no matter how calmly she approached them, they always left her feeling uncomfortable. Zara raised an eyebrow. "Oh, come on. Every morning you're lugging that little bag around, filled with all kinds of supplies. You check the exits, and I even saw you inspecting the ventilation once." She snickered, glancing at her friends who were now watching the scene unfold with interest. Megan took a breath. She knew this was just another day at the Academy. Another day where she would have to explain her Earth habits to beings who had never experienced the need for preparedness. "On Earth, we learn to be ready for unexpected situations," Megan explained, forcing a polite smile. "We can't predict everything that might happen, and sometimes being prepared can make a big difference." Zara laughed, and her friends joined in, their laughter resonating around the hall. "Unexpected situations? What do you expect to happen here? A sudden volcanic eruption? A solar flare striking down from the skies?" She rolled her eyes dramatically, and her friends chuckled along, clearly entertained by the exchange. Megan tried to ignore the laughter, but it was hard not to feel out of place. She looked at her pack and felt a pang of embarrassment, wondering for a moment if maybe she was overdoing it. But she reminded herself that her habits had a purpose. They weren't just meaningless quirks. Growing up on Earth, especially in areas prone to natural disasters and unpredictable weather, had taught her the value of being prepared. She couldn't just erase those lessons, no matter how advanced and safe the Galactic Academy seemed. "Maybe you don't get it," Megan said calmly, looking at Zara. But on Earth, things aren't always as controlled as they are here. We don't have technology that guarantees our safety at all times. We have to rely on ourselves, on what we carry with us, to get through unexpected situations. Zara seemed almost offended at Megan's explanation. How primitive, she said, her voice laced with disdain. Here, we don't have to rely on things, our technology, our environment, they're all designed to be safe. And if something were to happen, there are protocols professionals who handle emergencies. It's not the job of students to play hero with their little emergency kits. She smirked, her friends nodding in agreement. Megan couldn't help but feel a mix of frustration and amusement. Zara's tone reminded her of the arrogance some people from safe regions on Earth would have toward those who lived in riskier areas. I get it, Megan replied, trying to keep her tone respectful. Maybe you're right. Maybe I am overprepared for life here at the academy. But where I come from, preparation is part of survival. It's not about playing hero, it's just about being ready. As she spoke, Megan could feel the stares of other students around her, some curious, others dismissive. Zara, however, seemed intent on pushing further. And tell me, what exactly do you think it had happened here that would require whatever it is you carry in that bag? Zara reached out, as if she might open the pack and inspect its contents herself. Megan instinctively held her bag close. You never know, she replied softly, but firmly. Just because nothing has happened yet, doesn't mean it never will. Zara's expression twisted, her amusement turning into irritation. She opened her mouth to respond, likely with another snide remark. But at that moment, a loud chime echoed through the hall, signaling the start of class. The instructor, a wise-looking elder alien with countless years of experience, entered and the room fell into a respectful silence. Zara gave Megan one last glance, a mixture of pity and derision in her eyes, before returning to her seat. Throughout the lecture, Megan could feel the occasional glances from Zara and her friends, their whispers barely audible but enough to remind her that she was seen as an outsider. But Megan refused to let it get to her. She was here to learn, and if carrying her pack and checking exits made her feel safer, she'd keep doing it, no matter how primitive it seemed to her classmates. She reminded herself of her mother's words and held her head high, focusing on the lecture. The first chapter sets the stage for Megan's experience at the academy, establishing her outsider status and the skepticism she faces from alien classmates like Zara. Despite the mockery, Megan remains confident in her Earth habits, aware that they serve a purpose beyond appearances. Little does Zara realize, however, that these primitive habits she laughs at may soon become vital to her own survival. The day was bright, with a mild glow from the distant twin suns casting an amber light over the landscape as the students of the Galactic Academy prepared for their field trip. The destination was an asteroid outpost, situated on the edge of a newly explored nebula, where various life support systems and survival mechanisms were tested. It was one of the Academy's most popular field trips, intended to teach students how different life support technologies worked in environments with limited resources. As the students boarded the sleek, metallic transport shuttle, Megan found her usual seat at the back. She couldn't help but notice Zara and her friends giving her sidelong glances, no doubt remembering their exchange from the other day. Megan felt a twinge of anxiety but pushed it aside, focusing instead on the excitement of the trip. She'd done her research on the asteroid and prepared for any possible scenario, as usual, bringing her compact emergency pack with water, food, a portable mask, and other essentials. Despite the quiet amusement this still caused in some of her classmates, she was confident that being prepared was simply part of who she was. As the shuttle glided through space, the students were briefed on the purpose of the trip. They were to tour the life support systems and observe how the station maintained atmospheric balance, pressure, and temperature. This asteroid station was considered one of the safest in the galaxy, equipped with the latest technology to ensure stability and security. But as Megan listened, a voice in her head reminded her not to rely solely on technology. She was from Earth, and on Earth, you learn to trust yourself and your preparations. After a smooth landing, The students filed out of the shuttle and stepped onto the asteroid's surface. The ground was covered in metallic plates, designed to absorb vibrations and adjust to pressure shifts. Massive domes surrounded them, protecting various habitats and laboratories. The air was thin, but breathable, as a result of the artificial atmosphere generated by the station's systems. As they entered the main dome, Megan looked around in awe. The dome was an intricate labyrinth of pathways, each leading to a different part of the outpost. Glass-enclosed walkways spanned high above them, connecting different sections, while observation decks provided breathtaking views of the star-speckled void outside. Some students were already snapping photos and chatting excitedly, while others marveled at the high-tech systems around them. Megan, meanwhile, discreetly noted the nearest exits, mentally mapping the dome's layout, an old habit from her Earth days. The first part of the tour went smoothly. They visited the atmospheric control room, where engineers explained how they managed oxygen levels, air pressure, and temperature. Megan was fascinated, but she could tell some of her classmates were losing interest, especially Zara and her friends, who occasionally glanced at their communicator devices or exchanged quiet whispers. Megan ignored them, absorbing every word the engineers said. But halfway through the tour, as they made their way to the research wing, a low rumble shook the floor. The lights flickered briefly, causing a wave of murmurs and concerned glances among the students. The tour guide, a middle-aged alien with a calm demeanor, assured everyone it was likely just a minor tremor, a common occurrence in asteroid environments. The students relaxed, and the guide continued the tour. Then, suddenly, an ear-splitting alarm blared through the dome. Accompanied by flashing red lights, a robotic voice echoed overhead, warning gas leak detected in Sector 4. Evacuate immediately. This is not a drill. The initial shock paralyzed the students, and chaos erupted as they tried to comprehend what was happening. The usually serene atmosphere of the dome was now filled with the sounds of alarms, panicked voices, and the mechanical whirring of emergency doors closing to seal off affected areas. Megan's heart pounded, but she forced herself to stay calm, recalling the drills and emergency protocols she had trained herself to follow. Megan quickly scanned the area and saw Zara and her friends among the frightened students. Most of them had never experienced a real emergency, let alone one involving a hazardous gas leak. Megan, however, immediately took action. She reached into her pack, pulling out a portable air mask, something she always carried, just in case. Taking a quick breath through the mask, she motioned to Zara and her friends, who were frozen in panic. "Zara," Megan shouted, her voice muffled but still audible through the mask. Zara turned, her face pale with fear as she tried to process the situation. "Take this," Megan said, handing her a spare air mask. Zara looked at it, confused, but took it with trembling hands, putting it on as Megan instructed her. The gas leak was spreading quickly, and several students were already beginning to feel the effects. Zara's friends, too, were coughing and struggling to breathe. Megan quickly handed out the rest of her emergency supplies, small, single-use air filters and extra masks to those who needed them. She had anticipated something like this might happen, and had stocked her pack accordingly. Zara's friends looked at her with wide, grateful eyes, and Zara's initial skepticism began to waver. "Follow me," Megan called out, gesturing toward the emergency exit she had noted earlier. With Megan in the lead, a small group of students, including Zara and her friends, followed her down a narrow corridor toward the exit. Some stumbled along the way, weakened by the gas, but Megan encouraged them to keep going. She led them through the maze of corridors, keeping a calm but urgent pace. The robotic voice continued to blare overhead, announcing which sectors were closing off to contain the leak. As they turned another corner, they encountered a sealed door that blocked their path. The gas levels were rising, and several students began to panic, their fear evident in their wide eyes and frantic movements. Zara looked at Megan, her confidence shattered. What do we do now?" she stammered, her voice muffled behind the mask. The arrogance and pride she had displayed earlier were gone, replaced by a vulnerable, frightened look. Megan scanned their surroundings, her mind racing. She spotted an emergency hatch nearby, half hidden behind a control panel. Remembering a similar setup from one of her academy survival classes, she quickly went to the hatch and began pulling on the lever. "Help me with this." She called to Zara, who, despite her fear, came over to assist. With a few strong pulls, the hatch opened, revealing a ladder leading down to a lower corridor. Megan helped the others descend, guiding each of them carefully. By now, some of the students were dizzy, struggling to remain conscious. Megan felt the effects too, but she pushed herself to stay focused, counting each student as they made their way down. Once they reached the lower corridor, Megan led the group through a dimly lit path until they emerged in a safer sector of the dome. Emergency responders were already there, attending to other students and sealing off sections to contain the gas. The responders immediately came over to help Megan's group, providing oxygen masks and checking for injuries. As the responders tended to her classmates, Megan took a deep breath, feeling a wave of relief wash over her. She glanced at Zara, who was still catching her breath, clutching the air mask Megan had given her. Zara looked at Megan, her expression a mixture of gratitude and lingering shock. For a moment, they just stared at each other, the weight of the recent events sinking in. Megan could see Zara struggling with something, a realization, perhaps, of how close they had come to disaster and how, if not for Megan's strange habits, they might not have made it out unharmed. After the responders had stabilized everyone, they escorted the students back to the shuttle. The journey back to the academy was silent, each student lost in their thoughts, processing the terrifying experience. Megan sat quietly, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and pride. She had done what she came here to do: stay prepared, stay calm, and ensure safety, even if it meant going against the skepticism of those around her. Zara sat a few seats away, glancing occasionally at Megan, a newfound respect evident in her gaze. The arrogant alien who had once mocked her for carrying an emergency pack now saw her in a new light, recognizing that Megan's primitive habits had been the key to their survival. The return journey from the asteroid to the Galactic Academy was quiet, almost eerily so. Each student sat silently, lost in their thoughts, processing the chaotic and terrifying events that had just unfolded. Megan stared out the window, watching the stars slip by, her mind replaying the series of actions she had taken to lead Zara and the others to safety. It had been intense, far more than she'd prepared for, but her calm and collected nature had kept her focused on survival, something she'd learned back on Earth, where life could be unpredictable and preparation was essential. Zara sat a few rows behind Megan, her expression a mixture of exhaustion, awe, and something Megan couldn't quite place. She could tell Zara was wrestling with what had happened, processing the fact that the strange earthly habits she had mocked were, in the end, what had saved her life. Upon their arrival back at the academy, the students were guided to the medical wing for a thorough examination. Megan felt the usual routine discomfort as medical bots scanned her and administered a series of health checks, but she was more distracted by the whispers of the other students who had witnessed her actions. Many of them were casting her glances, not the usual amused or curious look she was used to, but rather something new: respect. After the examination, the students were given a few days off to recover from the traumatic experience. Megan welcomed the time alone, spending it reviewing the emergency protocols she'd mentally established for herself at the academy. She thought about how the situation had unfolded, and how her instincts, honed by her Earth upbringing, had kicked in automatically. But as much as she wanted to use the time for herself, she knew there was one more conversation she needed to have. She had seen the look in Zara's eyes on the shuttle, and Megan sensed that Zara was ready to confront her own misconceptions. The next day, Megan received a notification that Zara wanted to meet her. They agreed to meet in one of the Academy's quiet study gardens, a secluded spot beneath a dome of glass that let in the shimmering light of the distant stars. When Megan arrived, Zara was already there, seated on a stone bench, Her usually confident demeanor softened, as if the experience had stripped away her usual bravado. Zara looked up as Megan approached, her eyes reflecting a mixture of humility and uncertainty. Megan sat down beside her, waiting patiently, allowing Zara the time she needed to find her words. After a moment, Zara finally spoke. "Megan," she began softly, her voice lacking its usual sharpness. "I wanted to apologize." Megan raised her eyebrows, surprised at the directness of Zara's admission. She had expected Zara to be more guarded, to dance around the subject with some excuse or explanation, but here she was, humbled and genuine. Zara continued, her gaze focused on the ground as if finding it difficult to meet Megan's eyes. "I judged you. I judged your habits, your human ways. I thought they were primitive, useless. I thought." She trailed off, biting her lip before continuing. "I thought I was better." Megan nodded, sensing the vulnerability in Zara's words. "I understand," she replied quietly. "I know it probably looks strange carrying emergency supplies, checking exits, but for us it's part of survival. I couldn't just let go of those habits, even here, at the academy." Zara nodded, a faint smile crossing her lips. "I see that now. Back there, on the asteroid." She took a deep breath, her voice quivering slightly as she spoke. "I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. None of us did. And you didn't hesitate. You had everything we needed. You kept us calm, led us to safety, when I was sure we were doomed." Megan felt a mixture of relief and gratitude. It was rare for anyone at the academy to truly understand her perspective, to see the logic behind her earthly habits. But hearing Zara's confession, knowing that she had come to realize the value of those instincts, was deeply satisfying. Zara looked at Megan with newfound respect. "I want to thank you, Megan. You saved my life, and the lives of my friends. If it weren't for you, I don't know what would have happened." Megan gave a small smile. "You're welcome, Zara. I'm just glad we all made it back safely." They sat in silence for a moment, each processing the unspoken understanding that had grown between them. Finally, Zara broke the silence with a small laugh. "You know, I actually packed a small emergency kit this morning." Megan chuckled, amused but also touched by Zara's gesture. "Really?" Zara nodded, looking slightly embarrassed. "It's nothing like yours, of course. Just a few basics. But I think I understand now why you do it, why you're always prepared. It's not about fear, is it?" Megan shook her head. "No, it's not. It's about respect for the unpredictability of life. On Earth, we learn that even the safest places can surprise you. You can't control everything, but you can be ready." Zara sighed, nodding thoughtfully. "I suppose we take a lot for granted here. Our technology, our environments, they make us feel invincible. But now I see that there's value in being ready, in having the tools you need to survive." As they continued talking, Megan shared stories of Earth, tales of natural disasters and close calls, stories that illustrated the resilience and adaptability of humanity. Zara listened intently, her initial amusement replaced by genuine interest. She asked questions, wanting to understand more about this world that had shaped Megan's unique perspective on survival. Their conversation flowed naturally, and by the end of it, Megan felt a shift, not only in Zara's attitude but in the nature of their relationship. They had started as strangers, even adversaries, but through the shared experience of the crisis, they had become allies, and perhaps even friends. In the days that followed, Megan noticed that Zara seemed to carry herself differently around her. There was no longer a hint of mockery in her gaze. Instead, there was respect and a quiet admiration. Other students, too, began to look at Megan with newfound regard. Word of her actions on the asteroid had spread, and now, instead of mocking her for her primitive habits, they treated her as an equal, acknowledging the strength and wisdom she brought to the academy. One afternoon, As Megan walked through the academy corridors, Zara joined her, carrying her own small emergency kit. They exchanged a smile, a silent acknowledgement of the journey they had shared. As they continued down the hallway, other students watched, whispering, but this time with admiration and curiosity. For Megan, it was a quiet victory. She had come to the academy not just to learn, but also to show that humans, with their so-called primitive habits, had something valuable to offer. In the end, it was those very habits, the readiness, the respect for the unexpected, that had earned her the respect of her peers. And from that day forward, the Galactic Academy's students saw humans in a new light. Megan's actions had left an indelible mark on their perceptions, a reminder that strength and wisdom could come from the most unexpected places. And for Megan, the experience solidified her belief that, no matter how advanced the world around her became, she would always carry a piece of Earth with her, a piece that might just save lives one day.